So one of the things that we have been following on this channel is how Harris-Walz campaign is aggressively pursuing principled Republicans. Now, I don't agree with Republicans on pretty much anything, but there is something to be said about putting your country before your party. Because if we don't have a country, the party politics don't mean a damn thing. So what do I mean by that? If Donald Trump is able to get reelected, there's a high probability that he's going to further undermine our institutions, or that he might try to stay in power past the end of his second term, or he might start putting his political enemies in prison, which would mean the constitutional order of this country would be in jeopardy. So that's what I mean when I say if we don't have a country anymore. Of course, the land will still be here. Of course, a government will still exist in some way, shape, or form. But will it look like what the founding fathers intended it to look like? Or will it be taken over by some authoritarian sector of our society? That's why I think it's super important for people like Liz Cheney to do the right thing and endorse Kamala Harris. And that is exactly what we've seen over the weekend, because Liz Cheney did come out and say that Kamala Harris is the right choice in this moment. So let's go ahead and take a look at the reason she gave for voting Kamala this year, and then we'll go into a few other portions of her conversation as well.
I've been voting for 40 years. My first vote I ever cast was for Ronald Reagan in 1984. I've never voted for a Democrat.
Wow.
It tells you, I think, the stakes in this election. Donald Trump presents a challenge and a threat fundamentally to the Republic. We see it on a daily basis. Somebody who was willing to use violence in order to attempt to seize power, to stay in power. Someone who represents unrecoverable catastrophe, frankly, in my view. And we have to do everything possible to ensure that he doesn't, that he's not reelected. Given how close this race is, in my view, again, it's not enough. You have many Republicans out there who are saying, well, we're not going to vote for him, but we will write someone else in.
Right.
And I think that this time around, that's not enough. That it's important to actually cast a vote for Vice President Harris.
So, Liz Cheney is a staunch conservative. I was debating whether or not I should play a video about her abortion stance just to make my point that Liz Cheney and I do not agree on pretty much anything. I'm in huge disagreement to many of her policy ideas, many of her principles, but I can agree with her on this one. I think it is important that we elect people who are going to uphold our institutions, people who have respect for the office of the presidency, and to make sure that we're not allowing authoritarian leaders to overtake our democracy. And that is exactly what somebody like Trump might do. So I think that Liz Cheney is absolutely correct on this particular point. And that's not to say that I would be okay appeasing her in some way to get this endorsement, but I don't think that's what happened. I think Liz Cheney probably understands the risk of a second Trump term, and she is rightly calling out all the Republicans who aren't taking this stand to do so. And I think that that's the correct thing to do. And so I'm very happy that we are seeing that. Let's further listen to her on how she views Harris and Trump differently. What is the comparison that she's making in her mind? Let's go ahead and listen to that.
Very important point. If you look at Vice President Harris's speech, for example, at the Democratic Convention, it is a speech that Ronald Reagan could have given. It's a speech that George Bush could have given. It's very much an embrace and an understanding of the exceptional nature of this great nation, a love of America. a recognition that America is a special place, a recognition that we all have to work together to ensure that. And you contrast that to ensure that we maintain it. You contrast that with what we hear from Donald Trump, again, on a daily basis, that America is a failing nation, that America is a laughingstock. The trash talking of the United States of America very much is part of the message that Donald Trump is pushing.
So these are the same things that I hit on this channel very, very often. I think there is something to be said that Kamala Harris is giving us some hope and some optimism for the future, while Donald Trump, on the other hand, is talking about we are a nation in decline, we're a third world nation, you're not going to have a country anymore if you don't vote for me. And that's just, the difference couldn't be any bigger. And I want a presidential figure that is going to work to solve problems for all Americans, who believes in the promise of this country. Donald Trump is only interested in serving himself and getting more power for himself, where Kamala, on the other hand, does believe in the promise of this country, who tackles problems in a way that is going to help more Americans and all Americans. So the differences couldn't be more clear. And the way that Liz Cheney is pointing that out, I think, is absolutely correct. She also turns her sights to the actual Republican Party and what the actual today's Republican Party stands for and how it is so much different from the Republican Party that she is used to. So let's go ahead and take a look at her just tearing apart today's Republican Party, and then we will discuss.
We've seen a sea change. We now have a Republican Party that is embracing isolationism, that is embracing Putin, that, we've seen just in the last week, the Republican vice presidential nominee willing to appear, willing to be interviewed by Tucker Carlson, who is platforming pro-Nazis, is himself pushing pro-Nazi propaganda. That is not the party of Ronald Reagan. And I believe strongly that if you're talking about a national security set of issues and you care about America's leadership role in the world, a vote for Vice President Harris is the right vote to make this time around.
I don't think she is so right here. And I think that this type of messaging coming from a bona fide conservative who used to be one of the highest ranking Republicans in her party, I think this message coming from her for other moderate Republicans or other principled conservatives, it's going to mean more coming from her, is what I'm trying to say. I think people listening to me aren't going to take my messages the same as they would take Liz Cheney's message. We're kind of prone to trust and agree with people on our team, and that's why I think it is so important to make sure that people like Liz Cheney are joining our team to reach out to those more moderate Republicans or conservatives or whatever terminology you want to use. And I think she is rightly pointing out that the Republican Party is isolationist. They are in line more with Putin. We just found out that Russia dropped $10 million to try to amplify the voices of some of the most prominent conservative voices on the internet because they are in lockstep with Russia. So she could not be any more right here. And I think it's important coming from a figure like her. Another thing that she touched on, and I think it's an important thing for her to call out, is that, there's been some reporting that many Republicans want Kamala Harris to win, but aren't comfortable coming out and saying that publicly. And I think that is a mistake because I do think Donald Trump is an existential threat to this country, and we need every vote that we can get to make sure that he doesn't get a second term. So Liz Cheney calls out that type of behavior here. Let's go ahead and take a look.
And not taking the extra step.
Well, I would say, given the closeness of this election, particularly if you're going to find yourself voting in a swing state, you've got to take the extra step. If you really do recognize the threat that Donald Trump poses, then it's not enough to simply say, I'm not going to vote for him. I would also remind them, you know what, it's a secret ballot. So I would prefer to have as many people as possible out publicly making the case. But at the end of the day, you just have to wrestle with your own conscience when you're there in the voting booth. And I would expect that you will see far more Republicans and independents, you know, when the time comes and they've got to make that decision, make the right decision.
I really hope she is right about that. What she's saying is it's not enough to just go into the voting booth and make that decision, or at least this is the way I'm interpreting it. I think she's also saying that these people need to come out publicly and take a stand for our country. If you know that Donald Trump is a threat to the constitutional order of our republic, then it's not enough to just keep this stuff to yourself and only privately say that, you know, Kamala Harris is the right choice this time around. I think people do need to step up, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, and tell the people around them that Donald Trump is a threat to this nation and that Kamala Harris is the right choice, even if you don't agree with her on many of her policies. That is okay in this moment. There needs to be some sort of permission structure built so people feel comfortable breaking away from the MAGA cult. And that's the only way I could really describe it. Liz Cheney further goes on to say, or talk about, what the Republican Party has become today, and how she hopes that in the future, maybe once Trump is gone, I don't know when this would happen, but that one day she hopes that she can rebuild. So let's go ahead and listen to what she has to say about that.
Okay. I'm certainly not a Trump Republican. I am a conservative. I think that what's happened to the Republican Party today, is indefensible, and I hope to be able to rebuild, as I said, after this cycle. But I also think it's really important for us, as we're thinking about rebuilding, as we're thinking about the future of the country, to recognize that at the end of the day, the vast majority of people in this country want to know fundamentally that their elected officials are going to defend the peaceful transfer of power, and that they are going to put the Constitution first. And as someone who's been a lifelong Republican, it's heartbreaking to me to see what has happened to so many of the elected officials in my party, and I know we can do better.
So I think if we had to put a ranking onto things, we could rank things probably something like this. You need to have people that are going to adhere to the Constitution and stand up for the country. So that's putting your country before your party. If we don't have people that are following the Constitution, or are rewriting things in a way where we don't have the type of democracy that we expect here in this country, then that would probably be a bad thing. So putting your country before your party is definitely okay to do. And then we would have your party, which is where you find common ideology and common principles that you want to fight for. But in this moment, country has to come first. It has to come first. And that's okay. One thing I do like about what she said, or like how she's thinking, is that she's thinking about rebuilding the Republican Party after whatever this Donald Trump thing is. And I know you might hear a lot of crazy lefties online say, oh, Nancy Pelosi's so dumb. She always said we need a strong Republican Party. But I think Nancy Pelosi is right. There is value in having more conservative voices for us to argue with. I'm a more progressive person. There needs to be a push and pull, because if we go off in one direction too fast or too crazy, things can unravel. Things can get shaky. So there is a huge value in having that push and pull and arguing about the ideas and moving forward more incrementally. Because we play part of that equation as well. We pull us forward or push us forward. Principled conservatives try to pull us back or keep us sane, whatever the terminology is you want to use. But I think Liz Cheney is absolutely doing the right thing here. I think it's very important for the Harris-Walz campaign to continue to pursue these principled conservatives, to let people know that this is a big tent party and that we're here to band together to make sure that we're putting our country first and then our party politics second. Because, like I said, if we do not have a country, the party politics don't matter at all. And so I'm glad that Liz Cheney is recognizing this. I'm glad that Harris-Walz is recognizing this and is pursuing these people. And I hope that as we move closer to the election, more and more people will have that permission structure to do the right thing. So that's going to do it for me on this one, folks. If you got anything out of this video, if you could remember to smash that like button and hit subscribe, maybe share it with a friend or two, I'd very much appreciate that. If you think I got something wrong, or if you disagree with me about something, feel free to drop a comment below. And if you want to see other Republicans calling out Trump and MAGA world at the DNC, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. And I will see you guys on the next one. Damn, my voice is cracking.